Morning, as we start the chitas of the day. Today is Friday, and we learn the six-part shishi of Parshas Kisisa, and we are holding on chapter 34, verse number 10. Vayemer, the Abish to respond, God responded to Moshe Rabbeinu. Vayemer hine nech keres bis neged kol amcha. Behold, I will form a covenant in the presence of all your people. As in the flois, I'll make distinctions. That's where God responded. Ashalei nivru b'chol haaretz. I'll make distinctions such as not been created upon all the earth. Ubechol hagoyim, and between all the nations. V'ro kol ha'am, and the people, the world will see. Asher atov b'kirbe, that you are in our midst. I said, it's Ma'aseh Hashem, the work of God. Ki noiruhu, it's all inspiring. Asher ni oisi imach, which I will perform with you. So the Eibishter made a new Kriyas Sabris. The God, so to say, made a new covenant with Am Yisrael. And that's what Rashi says, next Rashi. God responds exactly what Moshe Rabbeinu asked. Niflois, Asa, an expression which related to Niflinu, we shall be distinguished. Meaning that we separate from all the pagan nations, and that the Shekhinah shall rest upon them. Shemar lecha, but be careful. This relationship goes two ways, and therefore Yidden need to take a responsibility. I'm going to chase away from, drive away from you. The Amorites and the Canaanites and the Hittites and the Perizzites and the Hivites and the Jebusites. 6 nations enumerated here. Not there's usually the 7 nations, because the Grishites, the 7th nation, got up and emigrated from them before even the Jews got there. Be careful. Do not make any covenant with the inhabitants of the nations, those who live there. These 7 nations, 6 are gone already. 6 other nations that are still there, do not make any kind of peace treaty with them. There'll be a snare in your midst. And we know this because this took many years to accomplish, till David HaMelech, who chased out these 6 nations from the land of Israel. Verse 13. He is mizbechesim titeitzum, you shall demolish their altars. Es matzevesim tishabrun, and shatter their monuments. Es hashedav tichresim, and cut down their sacred trees. They used to worship trees. As Rashi says, hashedav, this was a tree they used to worship. Because the most important thing is you do not bow yourself down to other gods. Hashem kanashmai, God, whose name is jealous, Elkanah, who is a jealous God. What does that mean? So Rashi says he's zealous to mete out retribution, and he's not indulgent. That meaning is a very expression of jealousy when you use a connection with God. It means that he is steadfast in his superiority over other deities and exacts retribution upon who's forsaken. It's one of the 3 cardinal sins: idolatry, immorality, and murder. You're going to at least you make a covenant with the nations around you, or nations that are living in the land of Israel. That's what's going to happen. They are going to make you stray into these idols. You'll bring sacrifice to their gods. And they'll call upon you, and you'll eat from their slaughter. Rashi says you may think that there's no punishment for eating it, But when you eat it, consider as if you endorse their worship. Through the eating of the sacrifice, you will come to take from their daughters for your sons. You will become to marry into marriage. As it says openly, this is where we see the concept of intermarriage, especially when a Jewish man marries a non-Jewish girl. You will take of their daughters for your sons. And then their daughters will go astray after their gods. And they will lead your sons astray after their gods. Yud Zayin. You shall not make a molten god for yourself. As Chag HaMatzos Tishmer, you shall keep the holiday of Pesach. Shiva Yom Teichel Matzos, for 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread. Which I command you, L'moed Chodesh Aviv, an appointed meeting time in the month of spring. And that's why we have this year 2 Adars, to make sure that Passover is in the spring. Because in the month of the spring, we went out of Egypt. Nash is the month of ripening, when the grain first ripens. And that's where, by Jews, we go to the moon and to the sun, because our Yom Tovim go to the seasons. Verse 19. All that it opens womb is mine. And your livestock that bears a male by the emergence of the ox or a lamb. So Rashi says, all open the womb is mine, mean the firstborn, that's Peterechem, the first child who opened the womb of his mother amongst human, and all your livestock that bears the firstborn male by the emergence of an ox or a lamb by the womb, meaning the male will open its womb. Same thing like a person that opened that is the first child shall be to God, given to God. Emergence, pete, the word means to be open, it means opening. Petachamer, and the first donkey, tifte beseh. Can't bring a donkey is not a kosher animal. And can't bring a donkey into the Beis HaMikdash. But you have to redeem it with a lamb. If you did not redeem it, you decide not to redeem it, then you shall decapitate it. You're not allowed to have any pleasure from the firstborn of a donkey. Kol b'cher b'necha tifta. So the lines again. Every firstborn of your child you need to redeem. You shall not see. You should not come before me to the Beis HaMikdash, to the holy temple, empty-handed. So now she says, first of all, this mitzvah of redeeming a non-kosher animal is only a donkey, not a lion, not a dog, only a donkey. It's Xeris HaKosim. Tifte b'steh, the owner gives the lamb to the kohen, and it becomes the ordinary unconsecrated property of the kohen. And the firstborn donkey may put to work by its owner. Arafta, he decapitates it with a cleaver. The rationale is he caused the kohen to lose his money by neglecting to give him the redemption of the lamb. Therefore, he loses his money by decapitating his donkey. His redemption is established as 5 sellers. as it says, and his redemption shall be performed at the age of 1 month by the evaluation of 5 shekels. That's later in the book of Numbers, the book of Bamidbar. Leiro panai dekam, do not appear before me empty-handed. According to the simple meaning Rashi says of this verse, this is a separate matter from the rest of the verse, and is unrelated to the firstborn, because there's no obligation to appear in the temple in commanding dealing with the firstborn. So what does that do with the pasuk? Instead, really, over here the pasuk is talking about something else. The verse instead is at the end of the verse is another warning, meaning that when you ascend to the temple on a festival, which just mentioned Pesach, you shall not appear empty-handed, but is incumbent upon you to bring a burnt offering, carbon, which is called oilas riyah. Whenever appearing before God, according to the way it's interpreted in the Bryce. This superfluous verse, what's already stated in Exodus, and it's free, meaning no additional reason is being here other than to be used as a gzeira shava. This is one of the ways of learning the Torah. An instance of similar wording. That's a gzeira shava. That's a simple translation of a gzeira shava. When you have 2 words that are similar, that's one of the ways of learning the Torah, is by looking at the similarity of words. There's a lot of Gemara on this. Gzeira shava. Lamed al anakas shel eved ivri shichamesh loim b'chol min v'min. So we have it. This Gemara says we learn from here. Teaches us about a provision given to a Hebrew slave when he is freed, that he is 5 sellers for each kind of sheep, grain, and wine, as much as the redemption of a firstborn. And this is elaborated in the tractate of Kiddushin. Verse 21. Sheishes yomim tavid, for 6 days you shall work. Ubashvi, on the 7th, Tishbais, you shall rest. B'chodesh, in plowing, ubakotzer, and in the harvest, Tishbais. So the question, what is the pasuk talking about? If it refers to Rashi, if it refers to the Shabbos, regular Shabbos, why are we plowing or harvest mentioned in particular, and not all kinds of work? We know the 10 Commandments, you're not allowed to work anything. So what is the meaning of the verse? Some of the rabbis say, in the Gemara, again, this is all Gemara, that this verse prohibits plowing before the 7th year. It's not talking about Shabbos. It's talking about the Shemitah. The 7th year, the sabbatical of the 7th year, in like this year, is Shemitah, is the 7th year in the land of Israel. So you cannot start even on the 6th, the beginning and the end of the 7th, and the end of the 6th year, which enters into the 7th, meaning plowing that benefits crop that grow in the 7th. You now do it. And the harvest of the 7th year that grows in after the 7th year, crops that have at least 1/3 of their growth during the 7th year. You can't have anything from it. Must be treated as the sanctity of the 7th year. That's what the meaning of the verse is. This is to teach us that you must add from the unholy, from part of the 6th year into the 7th, and from the 7th year into the 8th. That's why also on Shabbos, you should start Shabbos a little earlier and end Shabbos also a little later. But over here, the Torah is talking about the 7th year of the planting. So add always hold. Accordingly, this also means 6 days you shall work, and the 7th you shall rest. And concerning the work of the 6 days, which I have permitted you, there is a year in which plowing and harvest are prohibited. The plowing and the harvest of the 7th year need not to be stated because it already says your field shall not grow. So consequently, we deduce that this verse means plowing for the 7th year and the harvest after the 7th year. That's one way of looking at the verse. Other rabbis say in the Gemara that this verse is speaking about the weekly Shabbos. And the plowing and the harvest mentioned in the context are to inform you that just as it's prohibited plowing is optional plowing. So harvest referred to here, optional harvesting. The harvest of the Omer is however excluded from this prohibition. That means if Shabbos, if Pesach would fall on Shabbos, and then there's a mitzvah to take the Omer, then you have to take the Omer because it's mandatory and consequently supersedes the Shabbos. So there are mitzvahs that supersede the Shabbos, like the mitzvah of Milah, right? If you're not allowed to, Milah is a malacha, but if it falls on Shabbos, you're allowed, you have to do Milah on Shabbos. You do the mitzvah of Milah on Shabbos. Also, Omer, over here the pasuk is talking about Chodesh or Kotzir. That's the mitzvah of Omer, which they brought on Pesach, the first day of Pesach. So if it fell on Shabbos, you would have to do that mitzvah, even though it's a malacha. Verse 22. Chag Shavuos in the holiday, and you shall make yourself the festival of Shavuos, the festival of weeks. Tasalach, you shall make you Bikurei Ketzir Chitim, the first of the wheat harvest. The Chag HaOsif, and the festival of ingathering, Kufas Hashana, at the turn of the year. Rashi says Bikurei Ketzir Chitim. That is the festival which you bring 2 breads of wheat to the Beis Hamikdash. This was actually the only time you brought chametz, was Shavuos. You actually brought loaves of bread to the Beis Hamikdash, which was not, in general, there was no chametz in the temple. Bikurei, for this is the first meal offering brought to the temple from a new wheat crop. Because the meal offering of the Omer on Passover is brought from barley. So the barley, the Omer, the first wheat of barley was brought on Pesach. The first wheat of the first celebration of wheat was brought on Shavuos. Chag HaOsif, the festival of gathering, which occurs at the time you gather your grain from the fields into the house. This gathering, Asifa, is term denoting bringing into the house, like you shall take it into your house. And actually, that's the way something becomes obligated to Meiser and to Truma, is when you bring it into the house. And we learn all this from these psukim. Kufas Hashana, which is at the return of the year, at the beginning of the coming year, meaning it is the month of Tishrei, which is the first month of the counting of creation. So that's the cycle. Kufa, Rashi says, Lashon Mesiba V'Akafa is the next going around. Kufas Hashana continues around from Tishrei to Tishrei. And that's the way the holidays surrounded around, not the months, because actually Nisan is the first of the month, but the year is Tishrei. So the months, so that's what we celebrate, both the months and the sun, both the moon and the sun in essence. The months go according to the sun, so the monthly calendar, Nisan is the first month of the moon, but Tishrei is the first month to the sun calendar, so to say, to the way we establish the holidays, because they're connected to the grain, to the way the fields grow. Shalish pam bashana, 3 times during the year, Yeira kol zchurcha, all your males will appear. As Pnei Adon Hashem, they should come to the Beis Hamikdash, to come to face God. Shem Elokei Yisrael, the Lord your God is. Rashi says, all the male amongst you, this repeated elsewhere, are many commandments in the Torah, which are stated and repeated. The holidays are repeated many times in the Torah. Many of the 3 of the 4 times. So you're going to hear about the holidays a couple of times in the Torah. In order to cause liability and mete out punishment according to the number of negative commandments they contain and a number of positive commandments they contain. Every holiday has within it many positive and many negative. And therefore the Torah keeps enumerating it 3, 4, 5 times. Verse 24, when I drive out the nations from before you, and I'll widen your border. No one will covet, no one will want your land. God promises the Jews will live in tranquility. That they'll travel up to the land of to Yerushalayim, wherever they will be in the land of Israel. They will have no fear that nobody will come from across the border and say, "Oh, the Jews are not home; they're all in the Beis Hamikdash." Imagine in those days to travel to Yerushalayim. If you lived in Tzfat, or even further than Tzfat, it took you 7 days to get there. It took a minimum of 7 days to travel. So it took you 7 days to get there. It took you 7 days, you stayed there, and then it took you 7 days to get back. So can you imagine if all the Jews, all the men in the city, the border city, pick themselves up and leave? And even if the women are going to stay and the children, that's a dangerous situation. The nations that are surrounding you will know, hey, they're leaving, they're all leaving. This is the time to attack. But I'll make sure nobody touches you. Shalish pan bashan, not once a year, but 3 times a year. So now I said I will drive out, and so in the beginning, so Eidish, the word Eidish. Usually the word Eidish means inherit, but over here it means to drive out. The Chrafti is Gvuleh, and this way you will be far from the temple, right? Because you're going to be far away. Now, now Jews live in Eilat. So it's far away. 2-hour drive. You can imagine how much it would be in a donkey to go from Eilat to Yerushalayim. And so you can't constantly appear before me. Therefore, I'm setting 3 regalim, shalish regalim, pilgrimage. Verse 25. You shall not slaughter or sprinkle the blood of my sacrifice with chametz. And you shall not, and the offering of the Passover feast shall not remain overnight until morning. So Rashi says this is important, and that's why Pesach starts on the 14th of the month. Even though the Seder is at the 15th of the month, but Pesach starts on the 14th. It's different than every other holiday, or even Shabbos, that it starts at night. Pesach starts during the day. Why? Because because the carbon Pesach was brought on the 14th, from 12 o'clock at night, from midday. So therefore, you're not allowed to have chametz already, even till today. You're not allowed to have chametz on a certain time of the 14th by day. Like city shall not slaughter the Passover sacrifice as long as leaven exists. This specific warning to slaughter to one who sprinkles the blood or to one member of the group bringing the sacrifice. You have to get rid of the chametz first. That's number one. As the Targum uncle phrase it says, they'll not remain overnight until the morning away from the altar. Remaining overnight on top of the altar has no effect, does not disqualify the sacrifice. And the prohibition of staying overnight is only completely at the break of dawn. And the offering of the Passover, these refers to the sacrificial parts. From here we learn to apply this rule to all instances burning the fats or the limbs of the sacrifice, namely that it will be performed after the break of dawn if the sacrificial part stayed off the altar all night until the break of dawn. Once it had the break of dawn, sacrifice is disqualified. And we're going to learn more of this in Mir Shem as we come to the portion of the book of Vayikra, the book of Leviticus. Reishis B'Kuriat Mascha, the choice of the first of your soil. Taviyah Beis Alakecha, you shall bring to the house of God. Le'savashel Gedi B'Chalei V'imai. Do not cook a kid in its mother's milk. Now she says, Reishis B'Kuriat Mascha, this is referring to the fruits of the 7 species delineated into the praise of the land of wheat, barley, figs, vine, figs, pomegranates, a land of oil producing olives, a land of honey. That is honey of dates. So this is Bikurim, when you brought the first fruits on the holiday of Shavuot, you brought it from the 7 fruits that the land of Israel was praised. You didn't bring apples, you didn't bring oranges. You brought the fruits of the land that Israel was praised. This is a warning against cooking meat and milk together. This command is written 3 times in the Torah. And why is it written 3 times in the Torah? The Rashi said before, it's repeated 3 times to say 3 different prohibitions. You're not allowed to eat milk and meat together, whether you cooked it or not. You're not allowed to derive benefit from milk and meat together. That means that once you bought a milk and meat product, or you made milk and meat product by mistake, you cannot give it even to your dog. It has to be flushed down the toilet. It has to be thrown out. And one is prohibition of cooking. You're not allowed to cook meat and milk together. You're not allowed to eat milk and meat together. And you're not allowed to derive any satisfaction. You can't give it to a non-Jewish friend. It has to be destroyed. And that's a special law of mixing milk and meat together. So it's interesting, for example, a non-Jewish, non-kosher, if you had dishes that became treif because of non-kosher meat, you can give your dishes to a goy. You can't kosher it. But if they became non-kosher because of milk and meat, can't do anything with it. You can't derive pleasure from milk and meat together. Gedi, kol vlad rach b'mashmoy af egom kevis. A young offspring is meant, even a calf or a lamb. Since the Torah has specified in many places, Gediism, which is a young goat, is meant, is learned. The mention of the gi disqualifies, means all sucklings, all animals. B'chalei v'imei, what does this come to exclude? Exclude a fowl which has no milk. So minat Torah, chicken and meat and milk and meat is not a prohibition. It's a rabbinical prohibition, which is not prohibited by the Torah, but by a decree of the sages. So milk and meat in the Torah is meat of an animal. The rabbis prohibited chicken. They didn't prohibit fish. They prohibited chicken with milk. Because we consider chicken as part of the meat family. The Torah does not consider chicken as part of the meat family. The Torah considers meat from an animal. Cow, sheep, goats, kosher animals. Chicken is not part of it. But the rabbis prohibited chicken and milk together. And that completes the Chumash of the day. We now go to Tanya of the day. We are holding chapter 30 of Tanya. Now this is a very important, it's a very short Tanya of today. But the Alter Rebbe wants to emphasize. He wanted to start off. I'll start off with a story, famous story of the Frierdiker Rebbe, Pibes Babich Rebbe, that one time as a child asked his father, "Why do you have two eyes? Why did God create a nose, one mouth? Why didn't He create a person with one eye, one nose, one mouth? Why two eyes?" And his father said to him that your right eye is chesed, your left eye is gevura, and everything is the way you see things. That's what the Torah says. You should not follow your eyes. You should always use your right eye for somebody else. You should always look kind on somebody else, and you should always look at yourself and say you need to be better. Always look at your left eye and say you need to be better. So the Alter Rebbe wants to, after saying just 2 minutes ago, just yesterday, the Tanya of yesterday, that nobody should look at himself better than anybody. So you might think, you know what? Every person will say, you know what? I can do whatever I want. I'm no better. I'm as good as everybody. So let's just party. God gave me a heart. God gave me this character of desire. You know what? Let's party. Therefore, the Alter Rebbe says, listen, my friends, no. In the truth, if the Eibishter gave you a hot personality, you're right. God gave you a hot personality. Upanase not only gave you a hot personality, he put you in a situation. He gave you a parnasa that you're sitting in the streets. So now, listen, I have a hot personality. I'm sitting in the street. I'm seeing things, a lot of people walking, and here I have a hot personality. That's no excuse. There's no excuse for anybody to sin. There's no excuse. The Eibishter gave you that personality. The Eibishter gave you that inclination. And the Eibishter put you in a situation, maybe, that you are on the street. Learn to control yourself. Learn to control yourself. If God gave you that personality, He gave you all the tools and all the capabilities to control yourself. That's the opposite. God that gave a person this personality gave him more tools than a person that doesn't have that personality. And he should realize Mikra Rasha Gomer. If he doesn't control himself, he shouldn't say, listen, what should I do? I'm wonderful anyway. God loves me anyway. No, you are a Rasha. If I give in to my evil inclination, I'm wicked. There's no excuse for it. Because you have no awe of God in front of your eyes. So no excuse. Don't blame God. Don't blame others. The Eibishter gave you all the capabilities not to do it. So if you are a warrior, if you are a person that has your tendencies is to be negative, to be critical, that God gave you the capability to overcome it. And there's no excuse. There's nobody to blame. Don't blame God. Don't blame who knows what. It is in your capability. Because he should have controlled himself and restrained the feeling of desire in his heart because of the fear of God who sees all his actions. So therefore, don't use out what I said before, that you know what? That's the way you need to look at somebody else, at yourself. You need to have self-control. Always be kind to somebody else and have rachmanis on somebody else. Don't have so much rachmanis on yourself to do evil. And I should excuse my evil. Oh, what should I do? I have an inclination, I have desires. Oh, the Abish to put me there. You're right, but God gave you mind over matter as he ends off of the commission. As I explained before, the mind has supremacy over the heart by the nature of one's birth, meaning it's man's inborn character that his mind is able to master and restrain his heart's desires, and therefore no excuse for me to do one sin. The only reason why I'm doing the sin because I gave over my existence to my desire, and that's it. Nobody forced me. Nobody coerced me. There's nobody to blame but myself, and that's why I've given into the desire, and that's it. And that's no excuses. And I believe that's why the Fidik Rebbe puts it very short and very concise, and that's important to remember. So we shouldn't use out all the things the way we look at somebody else to use it out for ourselves. Use it out for somebody else. Always care and be uplift and be merciful and on somebody else. That don't judge him. You have to judge yourself. You're never going to judge yourself. You're never going to, everything is just going to be wonderful. Then you'll never do good. You need to look at yourself and you need to say, I need to have self-control. Even though I'm an emotional guy and I'm an excitable guy, and look at that, I'm in this situation. Control yourself. Learn how to control yourself. Today is the 17th day of the month, my friends. Chapter 83, 84, 85, 86, and 87. If you do those 5 chapters of Psalms, you would have done the chitas of the day. My friends, tomorrow is Shabbos. I hope you will all continue to learn chitas tomorrow. Do the last part, the 7th portion of the portion of Kisisa, and the Tanya of the day. And in Shem, with the help of God, we'll see each other all on Sunday, where we'll continue the new Parsha Vayakel, as we continue, as we come to the ultimate of the last 2 portions of the book of Exodus, and we prepare ourselves for the following book. So Mitchell, we'll see you all on Sunday at 8 a.m. We'll continue the chitas of the day. I wish you all a beautiful Shabbos, a happy Shabbos, a healthy Shabbos, a wonderful Shabbos. God bless you all. See you all on Shabbos in Mitzvah, and see you all on Sunday.